Hi, this is part 2 of C Sharp Programming Basics, and this here that you can see is the start page of Microsoft Visual Studio 2012, and it is from here that you will be able to start a new program. If you've downloaded a different version, say 2010 or just Visual C Sharp 2010 or 2008, the method for starting a new program should be the same, but the start page itself might look slightly different. It still should work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to start a new project from here, and then I've actually written a program that I'm going to load, and I'm going to go through it and I'm going to show you all the different parts of a program. Not necessarily what they do at this moment, because that'll be the next tutorial and that's what we'll start doing, but just what they are and how they should be written and what format they should be written in, and hopefully you'll better understand that in a couple of minutes when I start showing you. So in order to start a new program, you have to go up to File here, New Project. Now I know you can see here it says Start New Project, and that's fine if you've got Visual Studio 2012 edition, but I don't think this option is here in the Express editions. So the way to do it for all of them would be go to File, New Project, and if you click that, you'll see this window and you want to click Console Application and give it a name. You don't have to give it a name, but it's quite important that you do give it a name, as that will be the name on the directory, so you can understand what it does. So give it a meaningful name. So I've actually created a program already, so I'm not going to give this a meaningful name. I'm just going to show you what happens, because I've actually created a program. It's called Program Basics. So I'll just call it that just now, and Console Application, and OK. And then you get this window here. Alright, and once that's loaded, you can start writing, but I'm going to now go and open the program that I've written, and then I'll go through that with you. So this that you can see here is a program that outputs this line here, this text here, and I'll just show you that just now by going up to the run button, which you can't see right now, but it is a little green triangle and it says the word start next to it, and you can see that this is the output from this program here. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually go through each part of this program, starting with these here and moving right down and right through every single part, explaining what they actually are. As I said, don't worry too much about what they do at this particular moment, that'll come later on. Right now all you have to worry about is what they are and how they're written. Okay, so I'm going to start up here with these using statements, and what these are is sometimes when you're writing a program you want to be able to access classes and methods that other people have written. Reusing code is a great thing to do. It saves you know, on a lot of testing, and it saves on a lot of writing that you have to do. So it's a good idea to use classes and methods, you know, code that other people have written, and that's what this does. So you can access code, so you don't have to write a lot of the, you know, kind of like boring stuff. If you want, you instead can do the things that you want to do, and you don't have to worry about a lot of background stuff that Visual Studio will actually do for you, because it provides this API that you can use, which means Application Programming Interface, which is a collection of classes and methods and code. So that's what using statements do. They're just saying that right now you want to use system namespace, and what a namespace is a project really. It's just like a project, like the project I've got here, namespace program basics, that's the name of the project, and it's just a way of referring to what set of classes and methods you want to use. So using system is just saying using the system namespace, using all the classes and methods contained within the system namespace, which is the same as just saying using the system project, if that makes sense. Anyway, so using statements aren't a necessity. They make your code cleaner and neater, and they save on a lot of writing that you have to do, but they're not a necessity. Because what I could actually do is remove this here using system, and you can see that I'm getting a couple of errors down there at this part here. Now, console.writeLine is actually it's a method call. WriteLine is a method. Console is a class. And this class and this method is contained within the system namespace. So now that I've removed using system, you can see that these aren't working, because I haven't made any reference to the system namespace. I haven't said I want to use the classes and methods there. So now the compiler's like, well, I don't know what this is, I don't recognise it, because it's not in this project, and it's not in any projects that you've said you want to use, so what are you doing? But what you can do is type in the name of the namespace and a dot, and you can see that it will load correctly, and same for here. But of course the issue with doing that is that every time you use a class or a method from a namespace, you have to write the name of the namespace everywhere, every single time you do it. When it would be much easier surely to just use a using statement at the top of your code once, and then you can use anything you want easily. So that is what using statements are for. They're quite important, simply because they save on a lot of unnecessary typing and they make your code more readable and more understandable. So that's what they're for. And I don't think there's much else to say about them right now. I might say a bit more about them later on, but right now I think that's enough to be said about using statements. And so moving on, now you can understand what this is. This is namespace program basic. This is just declaring that this project, this namespace, is called program basic. So in future, you could go and say using program basics and access in any other project and access all of the classes and methods contained within this project. It's not as simple as just writing using, because you do have to set it up in a certain way, but we'll come to that later on. In any case, that's what namespace declaration is for. It's just so that the classes and methods that you've written within here don't get confused with other classes and methods. There's a more specific way to separate them, if you want. Okay, so moving on, this is your class name here, program, and I'm not going to go into what a class is right now, as I said, but all you need to know at this particular moment is a class is necessary in order to write methods, which are these things here. So it's important that you have your class declaration here. It will be written for you automatically when you open a Visual Studio project, and the only time you're going to have to worry about class declarations is when we get to the actual classes tutorial, at which point you will understand what they are. So don't have to worry about it too much right now. All I'm telling you is this is your class name, and all of your methods will be written within these two curly braces here. So all of your methods will be written within the class block, which is what this is called. Okay, so next part, this here is a method. This is actually quite a special method. It's your main method, and this is the way it's written, and you don't have to worry too much about anything here that's inside it or any of these things at all, because it's always written like this. I will explain it later on at some point, but it's always written like this, so right now you don't have to worry about it, because this will be loaded for you when you load a new program as well, as you've probably seen. So there's no issue here at all with having to remember how to write this. Okay, and this is your main entry point for your program. Anything that you write here is the first thing that will happen when you run your program. So if you write in here console.writeLine, if you wrote this line here, in here, the first thing that would happen is this would be written. But instead I've got this line here, so the first thing that's going to happen is this line will be carried out. Right, and moving on, this line here is a statement. You can get all different kinds of statements, they do all different kinds of things in programming, but that's what this is. And at the end of a statement you have to always have a semicolon. That tells the compiler it's at the end of the line and it can move on. If you don't have a semicolon, you will get an error, because it will attempt to connect this line to this line, and that is not a recognised statement or function or anything, so it won't work. You can see it there, semicolon expected. And so those are important, and just make sure that you always put them in at the end of statements. They don't come at the end of method blocks, which are these things here. Anything, they don't come after curly braces at all, but they do come at the end of statements, and this here is also a statement. So that's how you write a statement. Whatever statement you're writing, you'll write the statement and then you'll have a semicolon at the end. But there's all different ways to write them, and we'll go into that later on. Okay, this here is another method. It's called printout-message. This is not any kind of special method, this is just a method that I wrote myself, and this is the way you would write them. You don't have to worry about that again, because we're not going to be writing methods for quite a while, but it is the way you would write them if you were writing them. So, and then this is another statement here with its semicolon at the end, and all this does is it outputs text to the console. Alright, and finally this here, your curly braces, are how you open and close code blocks. And code blocks are just anything that is contained within a method or a class or whatever. And so code blocks can be nested. Alright, it's quite difficult to go too much into detail right now, and you might be confused about some things. All you have to really worry about here is the format of all of these things, where they are and how they're written. Nothing else. It'll become much clearer to you. It should be expected that you'd be quite confused right now, so don't worry about it. Just this tutorial here, the first tutorial, is going to be a bit confusing in the beginning, but you can go back to it for reference later on when you start to understand the parts, and it will open up to you. But I just want to urge that you don't get too worried right now about what these things are. Don't get too bogged down with it, because you will find out later on. You will know. All you have to see right now is what the format of these lines of code are, and then as we move on it will become much clearer to you what they're used for, and you'll start to learn the format of them anyway. Okay, so that's the end of the first tutorial. That's just introduction to a very simple program. In the following tutorial we're going to actually start off with some coding itself. I think I'm going to start off teaching you about variables, but I will be going over it in as much detail as possible and trying to make it as clear as possible for you. So hopefully you come back and watch that, and yeah, that's about it.